farmers will look to what their neighbours are doing, see that it's being used, see that it's added value.
G'day and welcome to the Farm's Advice podcast with your host, Jack Creswell. Whether you farm it, service it, or just love it, this podcast is for you. We'll bring you the techniques and technologies you can implement into your day straight from the leaders and innovators themselves. Spread the Farm's Advice so that we can reach more farmers right across Australia. Follow us on all of your socials at Farm's Advice, and let's get into this episode. Good morning, wherever you are, and you're tuning into the Farmers to Founders series, where we dive behind the scenes to see how Agtech solutions are resolving producers' problems on farm. Today's a cracking episode, and we'll dive a little bit deeper on the Farmers to Founders TEKFARM initiative with Ben Baghurst, the General Manager of Farmers to Founders. Let's get into this episode. Ben Baghurst from Farmers to Founders, great to have you on the Farmers Advice podcast for today's episode. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks very much, Jack. Very welcoming. Thank you.
Beautiful. So before we get started, down to agribusiness, as I usually say, Ben, whereabouts are you from and what's your connection to agriculture, and how did you land yourself into the role that you are currently today?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. My background for the last 15 plus years has been with the state government in South Australia in their agricultural department. And that's brought me into contact with all the production systems in South Australia, which relate broadly around the whole country. And most notably, for the last 4 or 5 years, I initiated a focus within PIRSA around reducing barriers, I guess, to the adoption of Agtech, because I saw it as a huge opportunity in agriculture. And that passion has led me to want to explore that same opportunity on a national stage. And the opportunity came up to join Farmers to Founders, Dr. Christine Pitt's team. So for the last few months, I have come on now in the full-time capacity as General Manager, so that I can keep exploring that that agenda of getting really good tech in the hands of farmers, Jack.
Well, it's an increasingly interesting space to see, and we've actually got a fair few years behind us now. It's not really at the very beginning of where Agtech is, and there's some great solutions plugging the gap into some farmers' problems out there. And there's also been a fair few solutions I've seen that aren't doing so well, or it wasn't looking at what the actual problem was for farmers. And maybe they've gone back and reiterated and come back with an even better product that farmers can actually implement. But talk to me, where are we at with Agtech? What's the current state of it within Australia? What's the industry looking like?
Well, I agree entirely. We're not at the start of the journey anymore, Jack. There's been a lot of excitement, at least initially, around Agtech, and a lot of companies are out there with a lot of ideas. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of consolidation now. Some of those ideas hit the mark and some of them didn't. But even though we're not at the start of the journey, I would still describe the Agtech industry in Australia as being relatively young, relatively immature, and I think that comes with opportunities and challenges. So now I see a case where I think there's more clarity for technology providers now in terms of how they need to engage and what they need to be bringing to the table with primary producers to really hit the mark and take the next step beyond hype and potential to realised opportunity on farm, and that's what we're putting our shoulder behind at the moment.
Plenty of opportunities out there as well. What are the challenges, and how are Farmers to Founders sort of flipping those challenges and creating opportunities out the back, and sort of leveling playing field and making everything sort of connect the dots? How's that working?
No, I appreciate that, Jack. It's a good question. One of the things that we saw as potentially a gap was technology companies working in isolation to solve problems. So we've had a real focus recently and are looking to formalise opportunities for technology companies to actually explore business-to-business opportunities with each other. And that adds value to their own business models because it gives them opportunities to monetize data and have additional these avenues of access to their products and services throughout the ecosystem. It's not just their own platform or their own brand necessarily. So we see that as positive from a business perspective, but it also adds a lot of value to potential end users, because they now are starting to get solutions that are broader. It's not necessarily an end-to-end solution for one of 20 on-farm challenges. They're incorporating with other technology providers so that they're solving large slabs of farming problems and providing insights that otherwise it would have been quite a disparate and disjointed way for primary producers to get those insights. So it's that working together from a business to business perspective that we see as a huge opportunity and a natural evolution of where the agtech market is now in Australia, but with very, very tangible flow and benefits to producers. So that's one of the trends that we're really hoping to accelerate, and we've identified as an opportunity for all concerned, Jack.
Yeah, there's definitely a few concerning issues out there from producers' perspective, and I'd like to touch on that with looking at producers' perspective, but also those sort of the startups and also the more established ag tech solutions out there. What are the barriers of adoption? We've said like we've come through a couple of years now. Are they still the same barriers of adoption for producers out there? Are we seeing these early adopters sort of influence other producers? What's the landscape looking like?
I think, Jack, the barriers are somewhat similar that they have been in the last 12 months. So what we're seeing is that not every technology that's being pushed to farmers has a satisfactory ROI, return on investment, to really warrant the initial outlay and the effort to integrate it on farm. So there's certainly been some skepticism from farmers about the value proposition of some technologies. And that is still there. Not every technology hits the mark. And in response to that, you mentioned demonstration and seeing things in action. And that very much is a part of it. We've seen some fantastic effort by research and development corporations, by state governments to set up really demonstration sites. They're often on publicly owned research centres and farms and the like. And I think that's playing a really valuable role. But I think we now need to evolve that model. And I can talk about this a little further as we keep discussing. But I think the opportunity now is not to raise broad awareness of the benefits of agtech. I think farmers have been exposed to that and broadly understand that, which is wonderful. But I'm hearing that when it comes to actually how do you use a specific technology in a specific region for a specific on-farm challenge, these demonstration opportunities haven't yet got to that sort of granular level of really effectively a workshop to say, right, what does this look like in practice for you? How do you integrate it into your farming operation? How do you explore all the interoperability, or how do you mix it in with your other technologies on farm and make sure that you're really getting the most out of it? So the whole of multiple different technologies is greater than the sum of the parts. And what does that look like in terms of actually using those software packages, those devices? So that's what we're now putting effort into as well, Jack. It's that next layer of I guess, sort of know-how and upskilling, so that producers and advisors can really get hands-on with the solution, not to understand conceptually how it will benefit for them, but what it looks like in practice, so they can be really confident to go and make the right decision, whether it's to invest or not to invest in a particular technology option.
Do you think communication plays a big part of it in, like, even on the packaging of what it is, or getting rid of what the jargon? Ag tech founders, they're all over it, but maybe producers are not really knowing. They want to connect the dots together. They don't want interoperability because they're unsure of what that means, or it may even scare them out of the paddock and back into the office looking for another solution. Is that something?
Yeah, very much so. And the way that we think that is probably best tackled is not to work exclusively with the technology providers and the primary producers, but to really zero in on where the farmers are currently getting their advice from. And in many cases, that'll be their advisor, their on-farm advisor, their agronomist. We talk to agronomists regularly, and unfortunately, the majority of them are not full bottle on every suitable technology for their customers, for their clients who they're advising in their region. And it's not their fault. It's a rapidly evolving space. There's an explosion of different companies claiming different opportunities, tech opportunities, and different benefits. So it is an ongoing complex challenge to be across that. But most of them aren't. And so we see a huge opportunity to work with the advisor community and just give them support, give them the ability to get that know-how on an ongoing basis, to get those tools. It might be technology adoption plan templates and processes and frameworks, and the skills and understanding, so they know what technologies will work together in this particular farming system, how to do it in practice, how to go about the farm planning in terms of financial cycles, growing seasons, how to get that technology on farm. So rather than expect the tech companies themselves to know all that they ultimately ideally would know about how to talk the farmer's language and how to engage in that sort of upskilling piece so that a farmer can grab their technology and run with it, we're thinking that the effort is better spent working with ag advisors who are already within that farmer's circle of trust, and that's who they would logically look to for advice. We think they have a huge role to play here as trusted intermediaries between the farmer and the technology solutions. So I think that's the next missing piece of the puzzle, Jack.
Absolutely. And we could talk just this whole episode about this piece and I'll just drop in a few comments. We've had a few pieces of ag tech come onto our own farm, and we've just sort of been left the product without the onboarding process of it, because it's been delivered through third parties, like merchandisers and everything. And because I actually think they were meant to run us up, but they're just flat chat at the moment, or before when we got it delivered. Is that a big sort of element to it as well, that onboarding process, and making sure that once you drop off the equipment, they actually know what they're going to be doing?
It is. Part of that is addressed through what I was just talking about, with advisors being better able to understand what it looks like in practice to deploy and integrate these technologies. But another part of it is that the technology companies fully appreciating what's required at the user end in terms of the time and effort it takes everyone to fully integrate that technology and to make sure that it's doing what ultimately everyone wants it to, that it's adding value, and that the support is there to extract that value, replace a part if it goes wrong, understand how to rejig the software if it's not hitting the mark. So there's a big onus on technology companies there. It ties in with that sort of business to business opportunity and awareness that technology companies need to have, because they're of different scales. They have different geographies that they have staff in. So at the moment, it's quite patchy in terms of any one technology where you can get all that you need to as a primary producer to get the most out of it. And that is holding the whole community back, as you've rightly identified. And so, I'm aware that different models are being explored. The corporates, for example, the Nutrients and Elders of this world. Is there a role for them to play, Jack, in having their advisory staff be upskilled to the point that they understand all that's needed from that onboarding, that integration, and that follow-up support and maintenance perspective, that they actually play an active role there? through a relationship with the technology companies. So it's not all care and no responsibility, it's care and responsibility. And then that, of course, flows through to the initial conversation about return on investment. So everyone needs to be eyes wide open on day one that, that's perhaps what it looks like, and that there will be a cost associated with that. And that's potentially okay, but let's be aware of that. Let's be transparent of that. Let's factor that cost into the return on investment assessment. And if it still all stacks up nicely, wonderful. Then you've got a situation where that the value will be delivered, but that it's real because the support's there, it's local, it's coming from someone you know and trust, who has all the skills and all the resources to tackle that challenge.
Beautiful. Rolling with the punches quite well there. And onto the other side of the perspective of the startup or the matured technology company within that, how are they dealing with the barriers of adoption? Because ultimately they do need to sell some piece of equipment to keep funding themselves to grow their ambitions, but also their accounts.
You're absolutely right. There are risks on all sides here, Jack. We're trying to de-risk it from the perspective of adoption. As I've said, around making sure that we've got implementation and maintenance and support in place so that a farmer gets that value. But at the same time, there's the challenges and risks from a technology development point of view. How do you reach a sizable customer base to get the economies of scale to have a viable business? And one of the things that we think is really important and that we encourage and facilitate is to put the farmer very much at the center of that innovation, adoption and extension process. So by doing that, we're really trying to strengthen the connections between the technology provider and the primary producer early on their technology development journey, so that when they ultimately bring a product to market and are putting it out there into the farming community for use, it's not with a sort of a hope and a prayer that it hits the mark. It's with full knowledge that they've worked with primary producers to get that user feedback. So they've got a user-centric design. It fits into their production systems, because ultimately a technology will speak for itself. If it's really doing what everyone needs, it's going to be adopted. Farmers will look to what their neighbours are doing, see that it's being used, see that it's added value, and they'll adopt it. But we only get to that point if it's hitting the mark. So that's why we spend a lot of time joining tech producers to early adopters in the farming community to give that trial opportunity, trialing a prototype, trialing a minimum viable product, providing feedback and having it tailored to their farm, but then having that inform the development of that technology so that when it hits the market more broadly, it's just right. And then everything else we're talking about around demonstration, advisors being fully in the know about that opportunity and how to talk to their farmers about it. It starts to all lift together. So that's the challenge. It's just bridging the cultural divide, really, that you'd probably say between your average tech developer and that farming community.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen the examples out there of technology that's been really going gangbusters, and farmers are they've surpassed the early adopters, and now they're sort of into the mass markets and even developing and growing globally as well as Australian Agtech. It's pretty exciting to see farmer-led ones, but also from technologists or analyst sort of situations. It's great to see these products actually helping farmers and leading to success. But how important is the adoption for success and sustainability for our farmers in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think it is really important. We're seeing challenges from climate at the moment. We're seeing big supply chain shocks internationally. feels like there's a trend towards nationalism almost, where countries are really doubling down on their own interests and their own supply chains and verticals, such that all the talk a decade ago was about global free trade. It feels like it's going the other way now, and we're in a situation where you can't rely on free global trade. We're seeing geopolitical shocks hit us when we weren't expecting it. And all that means that traditional supply chains in agriculture are being disrupted and threatened more regularly. And I think technology is really one of the only answers to tackle that. There's an explosion of digital technology, particularly around supply chain understanding, de-risking, and management. And without that, we're going to see that it's going to be harder and harder just to sustain what we're doing now, let alone grow our productivity and profitability. So if we're to stay competitive and get the step change that I think we're all angling for in agriculture, innovation and technology is going to be at the very heart of that. Because every other country is competing hard, innovating, bringing technology to the table. So it's now a requirement, not a sort of a curiosity or a luxury. And that's why I'm very happy to make it my full-time activity to really try and accelerate that adoption piece, and also the commercialization of technology into Australian markets. So no, it's not a nice to have. It's a must have in my book, Jack.
Absolutely, and it is pretty important as well to be a bit of a leader in the realm of ag tech, and I think that's how it's sort of playing out, I believe, for Australia. We're going quite well on our ag tech and our solutions of how we actually found the solutions to the problem, and the way that I know our makeup, I suppose, psychological makeup of Australians. We don't actually sell a product until it's actually 100% correct. And ages ago, I looked at investors, some file about how American sort of ag tech to Australian ag tech, and how Aussies sell their products so much better because we're not so salesy. We're quite humble in what we are, and then that sells our products a lot easier.
Oh, I think that's a great point. We have a wonderful reputation internationally in terms of both the food that we export, but equally the technology that we export that supports its growth. And that is a huge opportunity from a tech development point of view. Australia can really be a test bed for the development and commercialization of technology. But I would not be recommending that your average technology developer sees it as the end game. Our markets here, our primary production systems match those in other regions, North America and so forth, very, very well. We have so many diverse production systems in Australia that they match to so many other parts of the world. We have counter seasonality, of course, to the Northern Hemisphere, which provides opportunities for two-way flow of innovation, so that it can continue from growing season to growing season without needing to pause everything in winter. So there's enormous opportunity, and we should very much be seeing export of innovation and the technologies that we might develop here for our own primary producers across the world. That's the end game. That's the way that the Israelis look at it. That's the way the Dutch look at it. Primary production is not the end game for them. That's just almost an incidental stepping stone to what they see as the larger opportunity, which is selling their technology to the world.
Yeah. It's interesting you say Israeli, because they're quite prominent in ag tech, aren't they? And when I thought of it anyway, I didn't think Israel would be one of the countries to be making some good ag tech?
They're very much leaders, Jack, and it's not by accident, it's by design. They set out to be one, self-sufficient and extremely efficient, but they understood that the size of their agricultural market is minute for what they need to grow to feed themselves, and so that wasn't a market for technology to be a boost to their economy. And so they sell it to the world very deliberately and very, very well. And they support innovation in agriculture very well. They're not afraid to fund companies that have failed before, because they see that as an experience that they'll have learned from. And so they don't fear failure. They like to fail fast and then move on to something that's successful. And it's in their DNA. They try, if you're in a taxi in Tel Aviv, the taxi driver's telling you about their next startup idea. It's what they do. So we really do want to and will benefit from bringing a little bit of that entrepreneurial verve to Australia, and I think we should have exactly the same mindset. The proof's in the pudding.
We might all have to go catch a cab in Tel Aviv, see what it's all about. But I think it's interesting the way global sort of play it, and what countries are becoming more involved and more keen to get that technology out to the global specs. But let's bring it back to farmers to founders. You mentioned before you want to connect the dots from industry to, and that adoption from there to maybe your participants and everything like that. How are you actually placed to do that? And are these events? How are you rolling that out?
Well, we're trying to put a framework in place because I think we're at a point in time where a concerted, collaborative push where we better understand what the problems are in agriculture, and we better build the solutions, and we have really obvious opportunities and pathways for adoption, will create a rising tide that lifts all boats. And we want to use technology actually to facilitate all that. We have farming system groups and research and development corporations that do a wonderful job of engaging with primary producers and farmers and understanding what their problems are on farm. But it's very hands-on. It's very, very labor-intensive, and it shouldn't stop. There's no substitute for that face-to-face engagement. But we want to substitute that with an elegant technology platform that is I guess you'd call it a two-way digital marketplace, where we can actually capture all the on-farm problems in a database that's searchable by location, by industry, and that's of benefit to many. So we have this live, rich pool of data that lets all those that are interested to see exactly who's having the challenges and what those challenges are. And by making that available to the research community, to the policymakers in government, to the research and development corporations that set research and development agendas, to technology developers themselves, as part of that sort of customer validation piece that we were talking about, Jack, of, if they don't have deep personal connections with primary producers, well, rather than them just not being a part of that technology innovation community in agriculture, how can we give them, that entree and that way to get some insight about whether their idea hits the mark in terms of solving an on-farm challenge? That's what we're putting our mind to. There are farmers out there that, of course, Jack, the farmers are incredibly innovative by nature and will be doing wonderful things on farm that are just haven't been done before, well and truly fall under that innovation banner. But the farmer doesn't necessarily want to commercialize it, but they don't much mind if someone else does, and it might even be through some kickback to the farmer. Well, how about we have a situation where those farmers can actually connect with that entrepreneurial community, with the technologists, to say, hey, I've rigged up something here that, if you want to go and commercialize it, maybe cut me in, or maybe don't. Maybe I'll just be sleep well at night knowing that, the world's benefiting in the same way that I have.
Yeah.
All these opportunities, they're ad hoc at the moment. Sometimes they come together by who you know or who I know and how we can make connections. But so many of them don't happen because you just don't know who to talk to. And as a technologist with an idea, it might even be an idea in another industry. It might be from the mining industry, the defense industry. So much of this technology does translate into agriculture, but you don't really know where to start. Perhaps if you're in the mining sector and you don't have that network within primary production systems. But by having a searchable, connectable, a digital marketplace where you can say, right, well, I've got something that does X, and I'm going to search to see if that's actually a need in agriculture. And then those early adopters, those farmers who are keen to trial a prototype because they have a problem that hasn't currently been met by technology, they'll actually be given an opportunity to connect with those that can solve their problem. It's only a small subset of farmers that fall into that category, but it makes it all the more important that they can actually connect with someone who can solve their problem. So these are the gaps that we've identified. We're solving them, and then with that much deeper understanding of what the on-farm challenges are, we're building a community that is empowered to solve those challenges. So where there's not an innovation that's ready to go off the shelf to solve a particular problem, we work with stakeholders to develop companies and to encourage ideas and to highlight this is the gap. Let's have a hackathon. Let's start from scratch if we need to. These are the ideas. And then there's a venture creation pathway that we take people on if they have the passion to develop that idea all the way to the point that they're scaling it at mass internationally in that technology export scenario that we talked about a little earlier.
I love that. And also I could nearly guarantee every farm out there has rigged up something that's helped out their daily routine or something. And I think that's a really good point, that not all farmers are going to want to take this idea to commercial realities, and connecting the dots to the entrepreneurial sort of technologists out there may be a key element to that. But also for 2023 for the podcast, it's nearly like I've framed our theme to be frameworks and processes from what we're doing on our own farm, but also what I want farmers to achieve through listening to this podcast to make 23 to create those processes and everything. And that sort of comes out within these episodes. And I love the way that your framework works with both industry, but also the participants in terms of the ag tech or the entrepreneurs looking for these cool ideas that can plug a hole or help a problem out on farm. One thing I wanted to know was actually how you help with these adoption challenges within your early ventures, and how they're helping your participants, and what sort of outcomes are they seeing from having an adoption sort of barrier. What are those looking like?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Jack. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to say, we're trying to be aware of all the demonstration opportunities that are out there and build on those now to accelerate adoption, because we think it can be scaled beyond these government research and demonstration sites that are increasing, that play a really important role, but they're insufficient in and unto themselves. So how do we create a model where we're getting that broader adoption on commercial farms, but in an environment where we can sort of extend that outcome and that opportunity to neighbours, farming systems groups in the area, so that everyone can see what it looks like and really touch and feel it in a farming system that they really relate to, and they say, yep, that's exactly the same as mine. And so that's what we're doing. We've put in place a facilitated adoption model that we want to scale, where we're trying to de-risk it just a little bit for everyone. So we're asking the primary producers to kick in, some, but not all of the cost of implementing a technology. We're asking a technology company to discount their technology going onto that farm within this framework. And we have other partners who have an interest in the outcome. It might be, for example, it might be the wine sector. So it might be Wine Australia. And they might say, well, we really want to help our growers in this region to solve this problem. So we're actually going to contribute as well. And so we set up a network of private demonstrations that are explicitly solving a business problem, in this instance, in this example, a viticulture growing problem in a vineyard. And then we say, right, this is the training sandpit for the agricultural advisors that I was saying that I think there's a huge opportunity to lift their knowledge and understanding. So this is now their schoolyard, and we work with them and we develop the upskilling tools so that they can then use the technology adoption frameworks, the digital literacy, upskilling programs and so forth that we're developing to take that opportunity that they've seen in great detail on a commercial farm and then just talk to all their customers about that. And so that we have a sort of a national-wide network of commercial farms where there's a thorough understanding of what a suite of technologies looks like in practice in terms of how they're integrated, what's been the net effect from getting a baseline situation on the farm to following the impact on productivity and profitability from using a suite of complementary technologies. Case studies are then available, demonstration opportunities are facilitated so that no farmer is left wondering what are the appropriate technologies for their production challenges, because literally just down the road, there's been a facilitated example. The advisors within their circle of trust are fully in the know, and they've had opportunities to engage with these upskilling and know-how building opportunities. So basically, we're just trying to scale the opportunity for everyone concerned to have the light shone on the opportunity and really be able to decide, right, I know now what to invest in and why and how.
Yeah, I think we have come a long way within this adoption piece of ag tech, because if you speak to like my mates or something, a few years ago, you wouldn't expect them to have that much ag tech introduced or even looking at it now, but they're coming up telling me, I got this, what did you think, or have you talked to him or something like that. So I think it's really come a long way. I think it's interesting. The podcast has been running for 3 years now, and from the beginning of starting it out, we're all sort of learning our way and how quick these last couple of years have actually been, and maybe COVID sped that up for a lot of farmers. They've got used to Zoom. Surely they can get used to a bit of ag tech out in the paddock as well. It's cool to see as a farmer, but also as running the podcast, just to see how farmers are improving themselves step by step. But to touch on the adoption side of it, but we'll talk about your TEKFARM, the Farmers Founders TEKFARM model, and what is it? Talk to me about it for farmers out there, or even entrepreneurial led people. What is TEKFARM?
So TEKFARM is the framework and the name that we put behind those elements that I've talked about. So TEKFARM involves a deeper understanding of on-farm problems. It includes building solutions where there isn't one.
Yep.
And then it includes accelerating and facilitating the adoption of existing and emerging solutions to the problems. And we do that in an integrated way where it's clear within a particular region what the challenges are, and we use what we're describing as the muster platform for that. So this is a database where primary producers can enter their challenges and their problems. And in response to those entries, they can actually see and have a line of sight to what the best solutions are. and also those other capabilities in terms of linking with an advisor in their area who's a really good intermediary, who can bridge the gap between all the various technology options that might be relevant and what is going to work really well on that farm, and so forth. So it's all about a deeper understanding of the problem, connecting to the advisor who can help that farmer to solve the problem, making sure there's a clear line of sight to existing and emerging solutions for that advisor to be able to engage and provide absolutely cutting edge information on the, right down to the nitty gritty of how these technologies, which ones will work together, which ones won't, what's the order of deployments to maximize value for the farmer. And then that adoption piece to sort of scale that's where we, for those that work with us in this framework, those adoption case studies literally become case studies. So we will do some return on investment analysis and calculation to confirm that it delivers the value that we thought it would, and if it doesn't, then that's part of the reason there's to go back to producers and highlight a risk if one's emerging, to go back to the technology provider and say, there's a problem here. You're not hitting the mark. And so if you're going to remain and grow in this community, let's work together, but it needs a shift in the technology or in the way that it's being used on farm. And then have a full line of visibility for producers to be able to come and see what this looks like in practice on commercial farms very close to them. So that's TEKFARM. The partners are the farmers, of course, are the advisors, the technology companies, the research and development corporations who are so keen to see technology help their levy payers, and governments, of course, who have such a vested interest in a vibrant agriculture sector in Australia. So we have these partners signed up and increasingly signing up every day, Jack. And it's very much a watch this space. We're starting to roll it out with very exciting early results.
Amazing to see, and also looking into the problem first approach, which has also been a theme right the way through this episode. And to drop Matt Anderson's talk at Evoke Ag, he was, rather than coming up with a solution, having the problem first. How is that sort of identified within the Farmers Founders TEKFARM program, and how can you identify these problems before the solution?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in practice, we're putting, a digital information capture tool in the hands of advisors and farmers. So we're encouraging, be it government, extension and adoption officers and agricultural advisors and agronomists, when they're working with their farming communities on a particular farm, to actually enter a problem statement when they're seeing one, when they're exploring those on-farm challenges, to enter it digitally online, to geolocate it. It doesn't identify for others who are looking exactly where the farm is and who the farmer is, so it's completely anonymous from that perspective. But it starts to give us a really rich idea of what themes are coming out in terms of the problems in different sectors and different regions. So it's through farmers and advisors, Jack, that we're capturing this rich, permanent record, living database of problems, which we think is just an evolution of more traditional engagement activities that governments and advisors do with farmers, and that farming systems groups do with farmers. So we're trying to bring technology to solve and accelerate the technology opportunity on farm.
Great stuff. And for the people listening, I don't call them listeners, they're nearly like my early adopters, because they're looking for new information, how they can upskill or improve their daily routine. But how For those that don't feel like there's much support out there, how can they become a part of the tech farm to build their skills and capability to reach these goals and ultimately see success and a sustainable approach to their farming and the wealth generation? How does that work?
Oh, you're asking the pointy questions, Jack. I like that. Look, I think in practice, one good option is to go to the Farmers to Founders website and sign up to be kept informed to our newsletter, because that's going to highlight the tech farm opportunity as it evolves in over the next few months, and show people how to get involved, how to actually engage and interact and be a part of that framework. So my recommendation is go to, and if you just type in Farmers to Founders online, just Farmers, the number 2, Founders, you won't miss us. We're very easy to find. Jump onto the website, sign up to the newsletter, and that will keep everyone fully in the loop with all those opportunities.
Absolutely. And before you go, Ben, what would be your one piece of farms advice that you'd like someone to go away from this episode after listening?
Yeah, look, thanks very much, Jack. Look, I would just ask people to, and it's not so much advice. I'm going to frame this as a request. To engage with us on this journey and to, spend 3 minutes when the opportunity presents to share an on-farm challenge, with this community, with this framework, because by doing that, it's going to open up the door, for so many people to come and assist and solve and get behind some solutions. Researchers, governments, RDCs, grower groups, existing technology providers, entrepreneurs. So let's shine the light on what they need to be solving and give them a real line of sight. And that comes back to people being open to share their challenges, of course in a de-identified way in terms of location and person, but that's that's the challenge that I'm going to throw out there to farmers and advisors, and on the back of that, I think collectively we can make some really good things happen.
Absolutely, and it's great to see how far it's sort of come in the last few years, and pretty exciting to see. What are you most excited about next 5 years coming up?
I'm excited to see how these technologies start to work together. We're seeing a lot of good technology out there, Jack. You've highlighted that, and I really agree. But we're going to see technology companies working together more and more to form, larger, more holistic on-farm solutions to various decision-making challenges and pain points. And I can't wait to see what it looks like. With the explosion of AI, the use of satellite imagery, linking in with proximal, in the field sensors and weather data, combined with analytics of past farm performance. We're going to see powerful farm management solutions developing that are going to be somewhat mind-blowing. We're starting to see it now. I'm looking forward to that, Jack.
Absolutely. I'm pretty pumped up to see the results and the outcomes that we'll get in the next couple of years as well. Like after those 3-year trends of actually owning the piece of ag tech, to see what you can do with it and how far you can sort of push your margins to improve your profit, but also being a bit more sustainable, utilizing probably less labor at the time because of the labor shortages. Sort of all works together, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it really does. And if we, I need to see that, because everything we do is to try and make sure that when technology is deployed, it's actually providing a valuable outcome. So I really want to be able to track that and look back in 3 years' time, as you're saying, and see that the vast majority of what we're doing, the vast majority, has been really beneficial to the bottom line. So no, I'm excited by that, and that's that's the laser focus that we always have, Jack.
Amazing. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your own piece of farms advice. And for the listeners, the early adopters out there, keep an eye out for the rest of this Farmers to Founders series to take place on the podcast. Thank you very much.
Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really welcome the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners.
Beautiful. Where can we go to find you quickly, just to loop that back in for the tech?
Absolutely. You'll find me through the Farmers to Founders website and the rest of our team. So LinkedIn as well. No, I'd welcome anyone and everyone who's interested in this topic to drop me a line. I'm very enthusiastic about making some progress here, Jack.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ben. This Farms Advice episode does not stop here. Come and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and even join our Facebook group. Go to farmsadvice.com.au for more on this episode and spread the hashtag FarmsAdvice to your mates. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, that will let other farmers find us too. But until then, see you next Tuesday.